Hello and welcome to another episode of Today in Space. This week we have a segment of People of Science where we dive into the diverse background of different people that are involved in science, kind of break down, hey, is someone in science, they wear a lab coat and they work with beakers. No, that's not always true. So it's almost never true. So we have today with us a very special guest, Wayne from a7lprops on Instagram. As it says on his Instagram, he's a costume maker, prop builder, robot fabricator, and real-life rocket scientist. Wayne, thank you very much for being on the show.
Hi, it's good to be here.
We've got in touch with each other through a mutual connection online, which is so cool. Just given all this time with everyone being in lockdown and just how the internet is in general. The connections I've made just in this time alone has been really cool, and it's great that this is propped up that we get to talk.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start with kind of how we start all these segments. Tell people about what your career is in science right now, and we'll go from there.
All right. So my day job is I'm a rocket propulsion engineer, specifically with manufacturing and testing for Dynetics here in Huntsville, Alabama. So basically, I'm the guy who has to figure out how to make it, how to test it, and then I'm also the person who has to go out and actually test it.
So a perfect combination of like the theoretical, the practical, like, okay, this might work this way, but then you dive in and you actually figure out how it actually works.
Yes. My job basically is kind of a jack of all trades. So saying a exact job title also kind of gets difficult because like we've actually had meetings where like this is Wayne, he basically does everything.
That's very familiar to me because I've found myself kind of in a similar position with I think it's an aerospace mindset. I don't know why. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, when I went to school for this, you kind of learn a whole bunch of different things. You learn electronics, you learn fluids, you learn mechanics, and you kind of have to learn how to put them all together. Was that your experience?
Yeah, that was one of my main takeaways from earning my degree. Was the aerospace engineering curriculum was basically you're a little bit of everything. So we had to take courses in, so we're like a mechanical engineer or an electrical engineer would dive, much, much farther down the rabbit hole of circuitry and MOSFETs and all that fun stuff. We would take the introduction class of, basic resistors and capacitors, and we had to learn physics, electrical engineer, control theory, computer programming, and basically you learn enough that you can talk to any of these other subgroups and be able to have a conversation with them. So it's kind of like you're not exactly an expert at one thing, but you're very well educated in a little bit of everything.
Yes. Well, first, before I have so many things I want to ask, but I want to make sure that I stay on track here because this is just very exciting to talk to you, a like-minded person. What was your background before? Like, so before you went to school for aerospace engineering, did you have a background in science and engineering? Like, what brought you there to applying to school for this?
So if you go, I've always been into space and science and rockets, even from when I was 4 years old. I think my dad was walking with me outside the house one day and pointed at the moon. It's like, hey, one day you might go up there. So I always read like, when we went to the library, I would get like the space books, the fiction, the nonfiction ones, reading about Apollo and the shuttle. When I was 11 years old, my mom got me a model rocket for my birthday. This one.
Nice.
And she actually didn't know it flew. She thought it was just a toy model. She didn't realize it actually had like propellant in it and whatnot. So then basically that just took off for years. So every like holiday, birthday, Christmas, Easter, I was getting a new rocket kit. And then when I got to high school and started, I had a part-time job as a chicken breeder, and I finally started like designing my own.
Mm,
Like I dug up, Bernoulli's equation to figure out, where the CG versus the fins have to be in order to stay stable, and
mm.
actually started building my own.
Oh, that's awesome.
Um, by my senior year of high school, they just announced the first Team America Rocketry Challenge,
Mm,
which is still going on to this day. Obviously, this year's got canceled, but
mm.
it's a national high school competition. It's open for schools all across the country, and basically, you have to design, build, and fly a rocket that meets a very specific mission criteria.
Cool.
So the year we did it, the contest was two eggs on two or more stages to 1,500 feet exactly, no more, no less. And whoever got the closest and brought everything back safely uh, would win the grand prize,
Wow.
which was like a bunch of scholarships and grants and stuff. So we actually, me and my friends, Eric and Armand, with our teacher, Mr. Knapp, uh, we set out and we designed and built. We called it Firestorm. Actually,
That
that's the
is
rocket.
awesome. For the folks that just listening, he has it tattooed on his arm. This is awesome.
Yes. So we made it to the national playoffs of Virginia. I think our record was we got within 80 feet of it.
Wow.
Um, and
That's
the
close. Damn.
Yeah, I think the winning team got within five.
Wow.
So now the newer years of the competition, I think they also have a time requirement where it's not only the altitude, but you actually have to stay in the air from launch to landing. So now you also have to factor in how big your parachute is.
Mm,
Um, so yeah, I've actually been wanting to go back and try building something to go for recent competitions. Just by the time it opens up, I'm usually knee deep in some other project, and I never get around to it.
yeah, I can relate. That's great. That's so cool. I wanted a quick question on that stuff.
Mhm.
What supplies were you guys using to build these rockets? Because I think that kind of
Um,
skips a lot of
model,
people's minds.
yeah, model rockets are typically same thing you get from the stores. Those little Estes kits. So basically, it's a cardboard tube with a plastic nose cone, and usually if you're starting off, your fins are typically either injected molded plastic or balsa wood.
Mm,
When you start working your way up, then you get into plywood. So the rocket we built for a competition, we actually got supplies from a few different places. So we found a model rocket kit. It was called the Executioner at the time,
it's really
and it had the diameter we needed and a nose cone.
mm,
Uh, so we got that. Then we got extra body tubes, and then we made our fins and centering rings out of aircraft plywood.
mm.
So yeah, just using a scroll saw to cut that, and wood glue and epoxies, and everything you can get from Home Depot.
That's cool. So you're kind of like piecing together, just like, okay, I can find this with this model, then we're going to attach it with this stuff, and just kind of piecing it together to whatever.
Yes.
Yeah, that's cool. It's funny because it's kind of what we do with the space program. We have different contractors, and we kind of say, okay, you guys got this module. We'll take you guys are working on this, and we'll put it all together to build a system for.
Well, yeah. So even like in the real aerospace industry, a lot of it is okay. Is there something like when we have to go looking for valves for a lander
Mm,
or something? Typically, we're finding okay. Is there something that comes close? And if it's close, what do we need to do to change it to get it to meet our requirements? Like, is the flow rate not high enough? Do we need to weld on a fitting? Um, actually, one of my first projects as a full-time engineer was we built a peroxide powered lander, the Mighty Eagle lander,
mm,
and I was the lead propulsion engineer for that because my company delivered the hydrogen peroxide propulsion system. And hydrogen peroxide is a oxidizer that is a monopropellant. So if you run it across a silver catalyst, it decomposes into steam and oxygen, and that gives you thrust. So in order to keep this stuff from decomposing before that point, material compatibility is absolutely critical. Particularly, everything has to be either Teflon, Viton, 6061 aluminum, or 316 or 304 stainless steel. So we actually had to develop, we found valves that met our requirement, but the housing was the wrong type of aluminum. So we actually had to change the valve housing into the correct type of aluminum to make those valves work.
There's so many of those little things that go into like making all this work. I think for a lot of people, when they see a rocket launch, it looks almost like it's too easy. It looks like from the outside, when you're not the one doing it, you're like, oh, countdown, they launched it off. But there's so many little things that make the simplicity of it work in real life.
One of my managers had a really good quote about that, and it was from the outside, you're always wondering how come these things never fly on time. But then when you're on the inside, you're like, I'm amazed the thing flies at all. Because there's just so many parts, even with simple things. There's just so many parts, and we've worked with stuff where a hairline crack could cause issues because with the aerospace industry, your safety margins are so low to maximize, payload that, we can't have defects that we don't know how they're going to affect. So if we find a crack or something, we have to go through with the analyst and review boards of, okay, if we polish this out, is this thing still going to work, or did we remove too much material and now we have to start again? So
Right.
it gets super complicated.
Yeah, totally. I have a book on my desk. It's over there right now, but it's like an aerospace manufacturing guide, and like you flip through that thing, and you realize just how down to the granular structure all of the details are, down to the literal microstructure of the metal is controlled to a point.
Yeah, so like things on SLS, the component we're working on, like if I'm working on this or something at home, you go to Home Depot, you buy a bolt. With the project we're working on, it's like, okay, you have to find an approved supplier for this bolt because you can't have counterfeit bolts. That supplier has to give you full traceability from where that bolt was made. Where did the material for that bolt get made? Was there a lot inspection on that bolt? So when we deliver this unit, that one bolt might have its own binder of paperwork to show, okay, this is where this bolt came from, and we are confident this bolt is going to work.
It's crazy how much goes into all of it. It's mind blowing, really. So let's switch up a little bit. I want to ask. So you are working now where you are now. You went to school for aerospace engineering. Was there?
So kind of how I got to where I'm at right now is I graduated from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. I got my bachelor's degree in the 2007, and then I did 3 semesters for my master's in 2008. So my official diploma is master's in aerospace engineering with an emphasis on fluid mechanics and rocket propulsion. I think rocket scientist sounds better.
I think so.
So then how I ended up here was I was an intern for Martian Space Systems out in Mojave, California, working on their vertical takeoff and landing vehicles. And right after graduation, I sent a cover letter to this small company, Orion Propulsion, here in Huntsville. And right about that time, they just got the contract for a vertical takeoff, vertical landing vehicle prototype for NASA, the Lunar Lander Test Bed, or the cold test article. So it was this air-powered lander,
Mm.
and they needed someone to do the testing and stuff. So here comes my cover letter out of the blue, like, oh yeah, I literally just did this in Mojave. So that's how I got my job here. And then Orion got sold to Dynetics, and then that's so I've been at the same company for over 11 years now.
Mm. Mm. And that exchange of company to company when you don't really change your job, that seems to be a pretty constant in the monopolies of the aerospace industry.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've been working with the same core. I work with a very great group of people, and it's
Mm.
been that same core of people from Orion to Dynetics till now.
Oh, that's really interesting because I you don't think many people in many other industries have that opportunity where the team gets to stay together. Did you have a mentor or something, someone you looked up to while you were doing this, or maybe before this?
Uh, Not particularly. My experience is they ask you to do something, and then you need to go find out how to do it. So,
Mm.
like the Peroxide lander, it's more or less, all right, are you going to do the homework to figure out how to make this work? Because we're all, we are a private company, we are incredibly busy, so you're kind of expected, at least my experience is, you are to carry your own weight. Now,
Mm.
yeah, I've worked with people, had to show me the ropes of the test site and stuff, and I'm showing some new people the ropes of the test site, but a lot of it is self-learning.
And is that something that's come natural to you over the years, or is that you just someone that just likes to pick things up?
Pretty much. I'm like the only rocket scientist in my family, and
Mm.
my high school wasn't exactly big on, a lot of people learning science and stuff. So,
Mm.
um, I would actually go ahead in the science textbooks learning the stuff that we weren't even supposed to be getting to in the class program.
Mm.
And a lot of the stuff I'm actually between, like, rockets, I would basically taught myself how to build them through trial and error.
Mm.
And yeah, even a lot of the prop building stuff I do now is a lot of trial and error. Just researching online how people have done it.
Yeah, that's online has been a huge source for me to learn. Yeah, it's such a and there's so many people out there that are willing to share now. I mean, that wasn't the case. So I'm a child of the '90s, um, with a family that were immigrants that came over here. So it's not the idea of being a rocket scientist or the idea of just going and picking it up. It just wasn't. It was like, hey, we've got a restaurant. We're gonna work. We're gonna make a living.
Hmm.
So I relate to you in that way that I'm the only one that is in the family doing this kind of thing. But um, yeah, that's interesting. Did you have a favorite class in school or?
I always really liked physics. Yeah, high school I had a really good physics teacher, Mr. Capriati, and then my shop teacher, Mr. Knapp,
Mm,
was a nice guy too. In college, yeah, there were plenty of classes I enjoyed. It was a little bit of everything, like statics, physics, electrical engineering came in really handy later. Um, Fluid mechanics. I'll mention the two I absolutely hated were
please.
control theory, and computer programming. Which, when we
Mhm.
talk to BB-8, we'll get into that headache. Um, but the other, but honestly, the single biggest thing that was good for me in college was I ended up in a fraternity.
Oh.
Um, I so U of I, we have this thing called so I was a very um introverted kid. Like my grade school, I was that kid everybody picked on
Mm,
because I liked learning and stuff, and that wasn't cool enough.
yeah.
Um, and I had a really small high school um, where my graduating class was like 138 people.
Mm,
So like you would go to school, you really wouldn't talk to too many people, and then you would go home and build rockets with Star Wars playing in the background. Because back in my day, we only had three of them, and we just watched those over and over till the tape broke. But no, it was kind of an accident. U of I, we have this thing called University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. We have this thing called Quad Day with all the student organizations, and I had the most gaudy Star Wars tie-dye shirt you could possibly picture, and I was looking for the sci-fi group.
Hmm.
And then I stopped by this one house. They had their booth set up, Kappa Delta Rho, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we are in top 10 of grades, community outreach and stuff." And one of the brothers, Justin, just started talking to me because I think this is right when Knights of the Old Republic came out.
Oh, such a.
Uh, yeah, one of the PC games.
Hmm.
And he invited me over for one of their pledge events. I'm like, well, I'll just see if Animal House is true or whatnot.
Right.
And because I actually spent most of the senior year in high school saying I'm not going to join a fraternity. It's a bunch of drunks, and I don't drink.
Yep.
And kept going. Really got to know the guys, and yeah, they gave me a bid. I talked it over with my parents, and they said, "Yeah, go for it." And those guys really helped me get out of my shell and learn how to like talk and not only just work hard in college, but have fun, like go out and do stuff. And that was something I really didn't think I was going to do going into college. So, a lot of people talk about college for their classes and stuff, but yeah, frat was definitely the single most important thing to happen to me in the school.
Yep, that's so crazy. I didn't know that. I also joined a fraternity, Theta Chi at
Mm-hmm.
Worcester Polytech, and yeah, it changed. It was what kept me there.
Yeah.
Honestly, the studying and the course load was so difficult, and I was so ill prepared. So just to give context, it my school kind of similar where the science and math wasn't taken very seriously. Literally, we would have lost accreditation for the
Mm-hmm.
state about 2 years after I graduated. So that's always great. And I had doubled up on math and science the year after, so I was felt in a good place. But then I realized I'd go to this place, and the course load and everyone else has been in robotics clubs, and so flew by me. But having the guys, fraternity brothers there, it like you said, social interaction, like just being able to talk to people, have a conversation, hang out, like
Mm-hmm.
those skills are so important for people in such high technical things. Like it balances you, and it kind of gives you a little, I want to say an edge, but it just makes you more relatable, I think.
Yeah.
That's
It,
wild.
yeah, and that's a lot of engineers I know have trouble talking to muggles, and yeah, the frat, because also they were one of the few like first groups of people like, oh yeah, I'm a geek, I make rockets and costumes, and they're like, dude, that's awesome, and like
Yeah,
I'm
right.
like, huh, I wasn't expecting that.
Hmm.
Um, because yeah, let me put it this way: like when I left high school, I was like completely, all right, I'm ready to get out of here. Peace out, y'all. Um, I cried during my senior speech at the frat. I did not want to go.
Yeah, man. Well, that's magical. I'm so glad you shared that. Thank you.
Mhm.
Um, let's jump into the elephant in the room, or the R2D2 in the room, sitting next to you. Um, you got to tell us how you got into prop making and making droids and just all this magic that you do after work.
All right, so it's kind of a weird thing. So basically, what happened was again, I started building rockets when I was 11,
Mm.
and that was my hobby. I knew I wanted to be an aerospace engineer. Well, I wanted to be an astronaut, but a couple other things stopped that. Um, and what happened? But so going even back farther than that, um, I always loved Halloween. Halloween was my favorite holiday growing up. because also it was my birthday's October 1st. It's actually the same birthday as NASA.
Oh.
Um, so, you had October 1st of a birthday, then October 30th of candy, then you had Thanksgiving, which was the boring one, and then you had Christmas.
Yep.
Um, and Halloween, we would always make our costumes. So back in kindergarten, one of my first costumes was we were really big into Ghostbusters. I grew up with the
Mm.
cartoon show, and we had one of those blue plastic packs with the foam noodle. And my mom made me the jumpsuit and made like the little felt no ghost patch. And then the next year, I was really into the Rocketeer,
Good
which
movie.
is, yeah, it's a great movie. And I think it's the first movie I actually ended up seeing in the theater.
Mm.
Um, and my dad made I had the Rocketeer pajamas, and my dad made the helmet out of an old football helmet and some metal sheeting. My dad did construction when I was little,
Mm.
and then he also made the jetpacks out of two soda bottles and some bar. Um, and like I would wear that thing all the time. Um, so when I got to, so I graduated high school in 2003. And this is right in the middle of the prequel era of Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
And this was also, I was getting internet for like the first time. And I started learning about these people who do like Star Wars costumes for the charity functions. And there was a particular website called the Dented Helmet, and it's with all the Boba Fett stuff. And I was like, I'm going to do Jango Fett for Halloween.
Nice.
Because also my freshman year, we had a little bit of money from, student loans and stuff. So it's like I had more than $50 for the first time. Um, so I was like, I always loved Halloween. So I got a Ruby's helmet. I read how to do the armor out of plastic. I made the jetpack out of paper mache,
Mm.
and took that on Halloween. And it was like I was a rock star. Everybody like wanted to know how the thing was made. They wanted my picture. Girls actually were talking to me for once. Um, and then like during college, I just started topping myself off every year. So it was like, all right, did Jango Fett. Then like V for Vendetta came out. So I
Oh,
made the hat out of foam. I got the Guy Fawkes mask. I made the daggers out of like plywood.
nice.
I made the cape. I stole my mom's sewing machine. Um, and, so I was topping myself off. And then, so that's basically what happened is rocketry became my career. I started getting into the costuming stuff as a hobby.
Mm.
And during college, this was just for Halloween. Like, I knew Dragon Con existed back then,
Mm-hmm.
but there weren't all the mini cons we have now, where, like today, well, not today, but, before in the old world,
Right.
um, I would be going to a convention about once a month,
Mm.
because there's so many of them now.
Mm.
Um, and when I moved down to Huntsville, um, I moved into an apartment, and I found out the guy above me, David Reamer, actually was 501st. So he did
Oh,
like he's a very talented artist. So I'll give him the plug, 00FX. Um, and we and him started building stuff together under the banner two-story props. So we did a group of Ghostbusters. Actually, that pack up there.
oh, sweet. Oh,
Um,
awesome.
so that's a fiberglass one we did in 2009. So we did four of them, and then we did Halo ODST. So
Yes.
Dave sculpted all of that, and then I helped with the molding. And then we did a couple other projects together, like Daft Punk. And then we did a couple Dead Mouse heads for his bachelor party, because we went to the Ultra Music Festival. Um, I was his best man. So, closed down Miami, world famous DJs. So I think I won on best man duties. And but then we realized we also need our own individual names for, like portfolio reasons. So then I started going under the banner a7lprops, because so kind of to transfer to the spacesuit side of things. So when I first started, my first big project when I moved down here was we did the Ghostbuster group for Halloween. And then the next year I did Subject Delta from Bioshock 2. So we sculpted the helmet, we did the drill arm, it actually spun. And basically I was trying to compete at Dragon Con every year, because I'm like, all right, this is one of those things, like I want to get best in show one of these days. So we did that. Then Delta Delta got an honorable mention. And the next year I got introduced to Doctor Who. So I built a Dalek, a full-size Dalek. And the following year I'm like, okay, how do I top off a Dalek? And one of my dream projects was always I wanted a spacesuit. So I decided, okay, I think I'm far enough that now's the time to try it. So I built a A7L spacesuit. I made mine particularly be Jim Lovell's, because he's kind of a hero of mine. He's actually one of the reasons I got Eagle Scout. Yeah, there was an ad. I tried to find the magazine in my stash because I know I have it, but there was an ad where it's like, no one said to Jim Lovell, like, hey, you look like a nice guy. Do you want to go to the moon? And it was an ad for the Boy Scouts. And that was one of the things that kept me going, because he's an Eagle. Neil Armstrong's an Eagle Scout. Jim Lovell's an Eagle Scout. So that was one of the things that pushed me to get my Eagle Scout. So kind of that was the hardest part of the Jim Lovell costume, was earning the stinking Eagle Scout. So I built the suit, and that was, for a while, that was like the biggest thing I built in terms of notoriety, because Jim Lovell actually sent me a letter complimenting it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I have that framed in my office. Adam Savage from Mythbusters stalked my thread on the RPF, because he came to Huntsville for the Behind the Myths tour, and the local Huntsville makers had a bunch of stuff on display. One of the things was we have a group here that is building a full-size Millennium Falcon cockpit.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah, the full-scale Falcon project. And yeah, my friends are interesting. And I walk in with my moon helmet, and Adam Savage is like, wait, what? Because, he's big into spacesuits. And I'm walking him through it, and he said, oh, I know this suit. I've been following your build online on the RPF. Okay, Adam Savage is stalking me on the internet. So the suit was great. I loved it. Plus, you do get giddy, because when you put it on and you hear the echo in the helmet, I mean, it's not a real suit. It was basically a glorified sleeping bag. And that one didn't have any like locking wrist rings or anything. But it was, you felt awesome in it. And the only problem with wearing it long term was the neck ring was a little too far forward. So my head would sit like this.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that would get, yeah.
Yeah, and it got to the point I couldn't wear it. Well, the Space and Rocket Center here heard about it, and they actually bought the suit from me.
Wow.
Because you can't move real spacesuits because of ITAR restrictions. They're still classified at under the I forget the phrasing, but yeah, there's a lot of paperwork to move them. So they wanted one that they could put on display for like traveling exhibits and stuff. So yeah, that's what the only thing I got left of the moon suit is I have the flag I made because my masquerade skit was kind of reenact for Dragon Con that year, was reenacting the scene from Apollo 13 where Jim Lovell's walking on the moon.
Mm.
So, I put the flag down, then I did the run the fingers through the dirt thing on
Cool.
stage.
Wow, that must have felt validating to have the that place buy it from you, thinking that it's good enough for them to have it on display.
Oh, it was very humbling.
Yeah. That is awesome. Okay, so let's talk more about, yeah, let's go to R2D2.
All right, so R2, I've always wanted an R2D2 since I was 8, and I didn't even see the movie till I was 12. Yeah, first time I ever saw Star Wars, day after Christmas, '96. Me, my mom, and my brother just watched all 3 of them in a row.
Oh, that's
in one marathon, and then the special editions came out like that next month.
wow.
So R2 here was kind of so going back to the moon suit, when I first started this as a adult with disposable income, um, I was very adamant on competing and making things people haven't seen before.
Mm.
Like you don't see too many Daleks floating around Dragon Con. I think there's like 1 or 2 more now.
Mm.
And the Big Daddy suits, are much rarer than the splicers and stuff.
Mm.
And the moon suits were rare for a little while. But then, like the next Dragon Con, a bunch of people were showing up as astronauts. But R2, he was always like on my wish list, but I kept like, well, there's thousands of them. Like when you go to Dragon Con, there's like a whole little parade of R2D2s.
Mm.
And what finally prompted me to start building him was back in 2014, I was buying a house.
Mm.
Well, this house. And I didn't have time to build anything for competition. So I started finally getting the parts I needed from the R2 Builders Club. So there's
Mm.
no one kit you can buy to build an R2D2, but
Mm.
various members, like if someone has the mold for the hologram projector, they'll sell castings and stuff. So, we all kind of pool our resources. Like one guy has the metal equipment to spin the aluminum dome.
Mm.
He'll do a run like every now and then.
Oh.
So it is a lot if you're trying to figure out what to build your droid out of.
Hmm.
So I started buying the parts, and then they were just sitting for a while. And then, so I'm going to back up here for a little bit.
Sure.
Going to conventions prior to 2015 was so I started going to conventions when I was 24. So my first convention was, I believe, 2010. So this is, years after Revenge of the Sith. Clone Wars just premiered in like 2008. But prior to 2015 was a weird time for Star Wars because it was there was no middle ground anymore. Either you never saw the movies or you like read every single book,
Yeah.
and knew like the serial number on Han Solo's gun.
Right.
So I actually was consciously staying away from Star Wars stuff for a while because it was like I love the movies. They are a big part of my life, but I have not gone and read any of the old legacy stuff.
Yeah.
But again, I want an R2D2. Well, the day after Thanksgiving, 2014 was the teaser trailer for Force Awakens. And that was the big light switch because that was, all right, I'm getting this thing done because I want to do the stuff with the movie premieres in the children's hospitals. So I spent the next 5 months actually cutting all the parts, putting them together. So basically what he is he's a aluminum dome. The skin is styrene plastic. And it's actually hand cut with a hobby knife. And then he's got a plywood skeleton. So this is kind of a mid-range droid, because some of them can be built out of just pure styrene, and
Hmm.
then I know people who make them completely out of aluminum with all the panels
Wow.
that open up. Some people have the stun gun. Some people make them walk, and I'm like, I just need him to roll, play music, and turn his head. That's all I need him to do.
It's true.
Um, and so he was ready in May that year. So I took him to a few conventions, but I'm like, all right, he's going to be like most projects. He's going to do his year of cons, and then he'll get because again, I go to Dragon Con and you see an army of these things, so you kind
Mhm.
of take for granted. Well, when you go to the smaller cons, or you start doing non-con events, and you see people just light up because they don't even know these exist. They think
Right.
Disney owns all of them, and it's like they don't even know these fan-made ones exist.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, he did a few conventions, but then the day the movie came out, we visited Children's of Alabama in Birmingham, and he met the patients there, and that was the big like, okay, we got to do this more often. I
Mhm.
mean, I was crying really bad because it's one was just so stereo. Like people think I'm making this up because it just sounds so cliche, but there was a kid. He had his head was in a bandage, his arm was in a cast, and he had the IV rack.
Mm.
I mean, think stereotypical sick kid. You had this kid,
Yeah.
and he literally hugged the droid and said, "This is the best day ever." And yeah, I just kind of like lost it.
How often do you get to do this? I mean, obviously in the world
So
right
the
now it's weird,
hosp
but
yeah, well, in the old world, so he was getting out about like 2 times a month.
wow.
So between him and Kylo Ren with the 501st, like usually like every other weekend or so, like we're either doing a charity walk or a car show or a convention or a
Mm.
fundraiser or he's actually been in 4 weddings now.
Wow.
Yeah, he's been a ring bearer. He's been a ring bearer and a flower girl. And then there was one that we just crashed the reception. So
That's
like,
so great.
yeah, they did the sappy dances, and then they played the Imperial March because it was a geek themed wedding. And
Amazing.
then yeah, so it was a geek themed wedding actually in the Davidson Center under the Saturn V.
Mhm.
And yeah, they played the Imperial March. So we come out with R2, Vader, a legion of stormtroopers, and the bride just completely lost it. Like, oh my god, this is the greatest thing ever.
That's so crazy. Oh my God. Just because I think some people may not know, could you explain to the folks who the 501st is? I'm aware of them, but I think you'd explain.
The 501st is a professional costuming organization. It's completely nonprofit. We don't make any money doing this. And basically, it's people who make film accurate costumes, particularly the bad guys
Mm.
like Vader, Stormtroopers. And basically, what we do is we just kind of promote Star Wars, and we try to help organizations best we can. So like charities and hospitals that want to, surprise their patrons with appearances by Darth Vader and stormtroopers, they get a hold of us, and then we come by and we try to put smiles on faces and help raise money when we can.
I love it. I've been following the 501st for it feels like at least a year now, and I know they've been around for much longer than that. But it's yeah, it's so cool what you guys do. And the con life is so interesting. I'm working my way on different things. I've started going to them. Obviously, the New World. We'll see how that works out. I expect the first big one will be packed with people, just wanting to get back out.
I think we all have our own little drinking game on what's going to happen with this, particularly with Dragon Con. I think when they do open up, there's a couple smaller cons, particularly in my circle of cons, like the Huntsville Pop Culture Con and Atlanta Comic Con and even MomoCon, I think will be the first real guinea pigs of the distancing. Because let's be honest, I've gotten con crud at cons plenty of times.
Mm,
You know,
yeah.
even Star Wars Celebration. The 2 years I went, 1 year I got food poisoning, and then last year, all four of us that were in the hotel room all got the flu.
Oh.
Um, and so con crud is real. Um, People have been wearing masks at cons even before now. I just
Mhm.
think we're going to be seeing more of that. Um, and particularly more outfits that cover, everything.
Yeah.
Like one of the jokes I've been mentioning to some of my friends is uh, my character in the 501st is I'm actually one of the Kylo Rens.
Mm,
And so I have the helmet. And I've actually been trying to get some friends who are good with wigs and stuff to help me with the wig, so I can start doing like cons and events without the helmet. Because
mm,
the helmet you get used to, but you can't see down.
mm.
And plus, if you're trying to socialize with people and they can't see you, it gets kind of awkward.
Yeah.
But now moving forward, it's like, yeah, I guess I'm keeping the helmet on. Because I actually went grocery shopping 2 weeks ago, and everyone should be wearing their mask in public. So I put my cloth mask underneath, but then I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna see what happens. I put the Kylo Ren helmet on and went in the grocery store. Um, got some interesting looks.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, it was good to see some smiling because yeah, like at this point in time, we should have like the big one we're missing out is May the 4th is going to be on
Mhm.
Monday. And so this is actually the first time in 4 or 5 years now that I'm not heading down to the children's hospital with the droid to do a meet and greet.
Mm. Have they tried to? Because this has been the really interesting thing about all of this is finding the small ways through the technology that we have today, which we didn't have the last time something like this hit. Have they reached out about doing something digitally, or maybe even? I know it's tough; it's not the same, but
To the best of my knowledge, not with our garrison
mm,
about that. I'm assuming when things clear up, we'll try to figure something out. We
yeah.
were there recently because they actually got the movie um, January 10th.
Oh,
Um, yeah, so before the DVD came out, so they got the movie like 2 weeks or so after the premiere.
hmm,
So we actually went there for that to meet and greet meet and greet the patients and the doctors, hand out a bunch of coloring books and stuff before they got to see the movie.
that's great. That's awesome. It's going to be really interesting how the rest of this plays out. But I love that you're calling it the old world because it feels like that. It really does. Um, one of the things I want to talk to you about was BB-8.
Hmm.
Um, so you mentioned to me that it was one of the first working ones, correct?
It is one of the first. It's not the first.
Okay.
So BB-8's kind of a interesting story. So again, I built him. Again, I started like really in earnest building him the day after the teaser trailer came out.
Mm,
So when his first event happened, BB-8 was already a known thing.
mm,
Of okay, there is this little soccer ball in this new movie, and people were all trying to figure out how to build them. And what I kept getting was so people knew me for my Dalek, and then they saw this one. So I've kind of been the robot guy here for a long time. And everywhere I took R2, I kept getting the questions about, are you building BB-8? Is someone building BB-8? Is BB-8 possible? Is BB-8 a practical effect? BB-8, BB-8, BB-8. Um, and at first I was like, you know what? I'm not going to build BB-8, at least not right now, because I literally just finished R2D2. And I'm just going to kind of be you know, stay on the forums and see, what people come up with. And at this point, I didn't have a 3D printer.
Mm.
And I was kind of a little disheartened because all the topics weren't about the physics of the ball. It was, what are my printer settings for the dome?
Mm.
And you would see a bunch of people would print the stuff and then they wouldn't work on the inside. So it's, here's my static BB-8. And I'm like, you don't need the printer to make this work.
Right.
So my droid Weir, I name them all after aerospace figures. So this is Goddard, BB-8's Weir, the Dalek's name is Braun, and then Chopper is named after Parsons, because nothing says kid show like Jack Parsons. I'm waiting to see how many people in your podcast get that joke. So I ended up, my BB-8's kind of unique. Is there's only one 3D printed part on him, which is the little eye detail. Because basically what happened was we identified there was a company that made the 20-inch, half-inch thick polycarbonate ball that you could use to make the exterior for the hamster ball. Then another gentleman, Corey Pacchione, on the Builders Club, came out with decals and was selling the set, so I picked one up for my eventual build. And then my friend Diana gave me a 3D print of the head, but it was like too heavy to do anything with. So I already had like the entire exterior sitting in my living room. It's like, fine. So I made the head out of fiberglass, and then I actually designed the ball, my drive system, out of, again, I didn't have a CAD program at this time, so I actually designed it with graph paper, a calculator, and then I made mock-ups out of MDF just to see if it fit in the ball. And then I built him out of plywood and test drove him while the ball was still clear. And yeah, so the movie came out December of 2015. I had a rolling BB-8 by May of 2015. Yeah, 2015. So BB-8 was rolling by May of 2016.
Wow, wild. So, take me. What was the challenging part of getting BB-8 fully operational?
So first off, that was the big thing. He's not fully operational. So a lot of the big hangups is BB-8 has a lot of freedom of motion, so his head can, tilt, it can rotate, and I was like, all right, I'm scrapping all of that. He's going to roll, and his head's going to be able to look left and right. That's it. He's not going to tilt his head. I just need him to roll. So I simplified him by that. The two biggest problems were trying to shove everything into a beach ball, because he's a little too heavy for me to just plop here because he's about 80 pounds.
Okay.
Because he's got a lot of ballast there for the pendulum. So yeah, fitting everything in there in a round object, because like with R2, there's a fixed point where I can base everything off of. BB-8, there's no fixed point because it's a rolling ball, so it's like there's no good starting point. The other problem was you had to program a stability loop in him. And remember, my two worst subjects in school were computer programming and control theory. So I had to program a proportional integral derivative loop into an Arduino.
Oh my God.
So first off, I've never done Arduino programming before, so I had to get the introduction to Arduino and actually go through like, okay, how do I make the LED light up? How do I make the LED blink? How do I make him read a switch? And work my way up to the eventual drive system. And I borrowed a lot from many of the other builders too, particularly I forget his name, but X Robots UK on YouTube.
He's great. Yeah.
Yeah, so he published his files for his stability loop on his version 2 BB-8, I believe. I kind of borrowed a good chunk of his code.
I was watching him as he was building that version. That's cool. That's very cool.
Yeah, so I borrowed him, but then like, yeah, it was a very rage-inducing process. So I tell most people working on uh, BB actually did a better job making me Kylo Ren than him BB-8, which is actually kind of true in the grand scheme of things.
Man, I want to ask, so when you jumped into Arduino, I know so many people who talk about whether it's Raspberry Pi or Arduino,
Hmm.
about that they want to do it. What was your process? You had the help, obviously, of the maker community, which is, I think, a huge thing to tap into. But
Hmm.
what was your approach? Because I think so many people get paralysis by analysis of getting involved in something like that. And I've always seen having small projects with a clear goal has been helpful with learning that stuff. What was it for you?
I think the big thing is having a project you want to do.
Mm,
Because that's the big thing. Like if you just gave me the Arduino like years ago, in best example I can actually give you is the 3D printer.
mm,
So I did put off getting a 3D printer for years. Um, I built a BB-8 without a printer. I built the Proton Pack without a printer. Mark Watney, my original, when he was originally built, which we'll get into, he didn't have 3D printed parts originally.
mm,
And I would try, basically every year, I got to this point of, okay, either I can spend the next few months and the money to go get the printer and learn how to do it because I'm literally going to be starting from nothing to figure out how this works, or I can find a workaround.
mm.
And years, I would just find the workaround. Like BB-8, I found, would use the wood. A lot of my stuff is fiberglass. But then I finally hit about 2 years ago. I finally hit this. Every project on my wish list I had to have the printer because at this point it was like, okay, I really want to do a new BB-8 with a pendulum drive. I need the precision. I
Mm,
want to do the Mars Pathfinder. I need the precision. If I ever rebuild my moon suit, I need the precision because I'm going to need to do the locking bearings and
right.
stuff. Um, and I finally hit the point like, okay, I now have a reason to force myself to go through the pain of learning how to use a 3D printer.
Yep.
So that having a project that was like, okay, what's going to make me do this? But even then, it was also, I got the printer and I knew like, okay, my first project, I don't want to be load bearing, like no robot, because I don't know how strong filament is.
Fair. Yep.
So I'm like, okay, what can I build that's not load bearing? And I actually went back and built the Rocketeer's rocket pack
Oh, cool.
because that was something I could do with extrusions and revolutions rather. I say easily, but compared to a lot of other props with organic shapes, it was something that was in my skill level. Because
Mm,
before 2 years ago, I hadn't touched 3D modeling since college.
okay.
Um, and that kind of forced me to learn the 3D printing stuff. So,
Mm,
like with Arduino, yeah, BB-8 was that thing that prompted me, okay, I have to learn how to do this.
yeah.
But then those lessons I've actually used in like my new Proton Pack. I actually use Arduino to control all the lights and sounds.
Mm,
The Pathfinder I'm building in the garage is going to use the Arduino to control its steering
cool.
because you have to have this differential thing.
Mm.
Um, yeah, and then yeah, the I've actually had to use it at work. The Arduino, we had to build a valve driver, and how do we control the timing? Well, here I can set up two relays with an Arduino, and we can
Mm.
set up the valve timing. In fact, it's actually been very funny how much this hobby has been helping my day job.
Isn't it
Uh,
fascinating?
yes, because there's been several instances like we need a fit check article to see if this piece is going to fit in there or to show our
Mm,
customer during a design review, here's how big this thing is. So we would either print I would either print the thing, or one was we had to make this mock-up out of foam because the machine shop was like, well, if we're going to make it out of aluminum, it's going to take weeks and weeks and weeks. And I'm like, I can give you the same thing in a week for about $200.
right.
um, so we did that, and even one that came up recently was we had to inspect threads. on a thing
Mhm.
to make sure they weren't damaged. Well, you can't get a tool in there.
Right.
So what we did is, I make all these molds and stuff. So we actually use casting rubber, put it in there, and then we had a negative that you could put on optical comparator.
That's the reverse engineering of it is awesome. Yeah, that I've found a so for me it was really 3D printing jumping into that,
Hmm.
and that has opened up a whole spectrum of like of how it helps with the day job. It helps with everything else around. I mean, if the podcast where we are 3D printing is the Dragon 2
Yeah.
capsule. Just good to explain to people and wow, that is very cool. So, well, let me just say it's been an absolute pleasure so far talking with you. I want to go to the next step. I want to talk about Mark Watney's
Yeah.
outfit. Let's discuss the challenges with that and kind of where did that come from? Was it just the next spacesuit or?
Okay, so this is what happened. So uh, Moon Suit happened in 2013, Soul in 2014, and honestly, I thought at that point, I'm like, I'm done competing. How the hell do I top a Moon Suit? Because the big the projects you get the best reception to are the ones that you don't see a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it also has to be something most people will recognize.
Mm,
So, like everybody knows what an astronaut suit looks like. It's the same thing like with R2D2. Even if you haven't seen Star Wars,
right.
you know what this is. Um, and what happened was, so in 2015, I remember, the funny thing is someone mentioned the book to me before I knew the book existed. And they're like,
Mm,
oh, you got to read this book. It's about a guy like growing potatoes on Mars. And I'm like, that sounds like stupid. Um, and then I saw the trailer for the movie. I'm like, oh, okay, this looks good.
mm,
And I read the book. Um, because I was debating whether to see the movie first or read the book first, but
mm.
we were taking a bunch of flights for work at this time because we had to go to another facility for some testing. And I read the book, and I loved the book um, because it kind of makes me feel like I could be a superhero because it's like a lot of astronaut stories. They're
Mm,
the most dry, boring people, or the story itself is always one of these like, oh, we're on a mission to save humanity, and the Martian is literally it's no, it's this guy is stuck here and he's trying to figure out how to live.
yeah.
And it's like we're not going to, obviously they had to take a few pet peeves, like with the storm, they had to,
Right.
exaggerate a bit because they had to have a reason why he's there by himself.
Right. Right.
But like where he's doing the simple math and stuff, it's like, dude, this is awesome. Like I don't read a lot of fiction books
Mm,
because usually I'll just I'm reading like either science books or something to learn like a property or something.
mm.
I have reread or listened to the Martian audiobook at least like 8 times now.
Wow. Okay.
In fact, usually when I drive home to visit my parents, it's like, oh man, I got Audible. What am I going to listen to? All right, Martian again. I have listened to Artemis. Artemis is really good. I just have to do it the second time. Um, but so read the book. The movie came out. Actually, movie came out like 2 days after my birthday, so I had dragged everybody to go see it. And one of the things that held me up with a lot of spacesuits is the neck ring,
Mm,
because like an Apollo suit, the bubble helmet sits on the neck ring and you freely move your head in it.
mm,
So I was able to do that with magnets. A lot of your other suits, like the suit from the shuttle escape suit, the Mercury suits, and even if we go into fiction suits like the interstellar suits,
mhm.
they have a locking neck ring, but the helmet has to turn.
Mm.
And without a 3D printer, there was no way I could do this, because it'd either have to be I get a guy to machine it for me, or
Hmm.
there was just no reason. So that like held me back from doing a lot of spacesuit projects. Same thing with the wrist rings. So the Martian suit um, suddenly was super plausible, because the way the costume's designed, there's no actual locking neck ring.
Mm.
The helmet actually just sits on your head. And then, there's some fake, Hollywood gasket stuff to
Right.
connect, but there's no neck ring. So it's like,
Mm.
okay, there's no engineering holdup for me to do this.
Mm.
Um, and plus, again, I really love the movie, and the suit looked technical enough for, okay, I have something to compete with again.
Yeah.
Which also added to the fact why I wasn't going to build BB-8 that year, because it meant I'm now building both of these at the exact same time.
Right.
Which is the whole irony of that whole "who wore it better" meme. So I start the suit. I started off the RPF. A bunch of people on the RPF identified the buckles and the actual climbing harness that was worn.
Mm.
So I, started stockpiling those parts. And then what I did was I had duct tape mannequin for the torso, and basically used layers and layers of plastic to build up and sculpt what that torso had to look like. So
Mm.
I literally had every printout of the trailer I could, like, taped to my wall, like,
Yeah.
the crazy Charlie Day conspiracy kind of thing. Yeah, just literally my whole wall was just covered with every angle I
You
could
have a
get
lot
of
of
it.
explaining to do if someone walked in. Yeah.
Oh yeah, exactly. um, and I sculpted it, and then I got to a point I had to mold it and then pull a casting so I could refine the sculpt into one final thing.
Mm.
And at this point, I had a test piece. And then the way we did the jumpsuit was I made a mock-up out of just white spandex,
Mm.
and we put on the harness and the torso. And my friend David, again, 00 Effects, he came by and he drew the lines like where all these panels needed to be. So then we cut it apart. He took that, and then he's a graphic designer,
Mm.
and designed the suit, and then we had that custom printed on spandex. So
Oh.
that's how we made the undersuit. So it's kind of like when you go to conventions and you see a lot of people with the Spider-Man suits and the diva from Overwatch.
Mm.
That's more or less what's going on with the suit.
Oh, okay.
And then the suit itself was made out of so the torso section and the helmet was made out of so there's rubber molds, and then they're cast in fiberglass. A lot of cosplayers today use EVA foam because it's cheap, it's easy to use. I I've seen some people do great stuff with it, but for me, I want it to feel real too.
Mm.
I don't want to be just the 3-foot rule. I want to be the 3-inch rule.
Mm.
So it is a rigid component. So I actually have the helmet here.
Awesome. Oh, that looks incredible.
Thank you. So the helmet,
Wow.
there are 3 different molds I had to make this work. So I sculpted this out of pink insulation foam,
Mm.
like what you get at Home Depot,
Mm-hmm.
and then sculpted it to the shape, and then had to make a rough mold. One mold became the final sculpt with, all the rigid parts you see here. So, the hose connectors, the, indents and stuff.
Mm.
And then the other casting became the vacuum form buck. So the visor is actually PTG.
Mm.
And we have a 2-foot by 2-foot vacuum former. So we actually heat this up and pull it over a buck to its shape. So it actually fits the helmet perfectly. And then the headband is actually just one of those face shields.
Mm. Oh,
Um,
yes, I see it now. Yeah. I have one in my.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So cut one up, bolted it in there, and then we have a cable. so that we can plug it into a torso section so the lights turn on. So I've
Okay.
only actually built 2 of these. One of them is my personal helmet, and the other one is in Andy Weir's office.
That is so cool.
Yeah,
How did that? Yeah, go ahead.
because he found someone posted on Twitter my Watney costume from Dragon Con, and so I just dropped him a line and said hi, and I'm like, hey, did you get a helmet from the production? And he's like, no, and I'm like, do you want one? So yeah, I sent him a helmet. Yeah,
That's so cool.
he's one of those really cool celebrities because I drop him a line every now and then, and he actually responds.
Mm.
So yeah, I'm really excited to see his new book coming out next year.
Now, which book's that?
The Hail It's Hail Mary something. It's they
Okay.
just announced like Ryan Gosling's already going to be in the movie.
Okay.
Um, I think the premise is it's a astronaut on a mission to save Earth.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, that's all I know about right now.
Okay, that's cool. I'll when we put this podcast out, I'll throw something on there so people can see what the trailer looks like or something like that. Um,
Yeah, there's no trailer yet. Like yeah, the book is coming out, and then yeah, who knows when the movie's coming out.
right, right. That's fair. Um, I think one of the questions a lot of people are wondering is how do you find the time to manage when to do all the stuff? You have a day job, you do this on the side. I've done my own version of it at here with the podcast and 3D printing stuff, but I'm interested. What's your technique for keeping yourself going with this stuff and finding the time to do all these things?
Um, well, yeah, work has been good about because I know a lot of companies, um, they expect you to work like 60, 70 hours a week. And I work my butt off during the day. Like most of us are on like 3 different programs.
Mm,
And yeah, there's days where, we have to meet a deadline. But I try not to live at the office because
mm,
I have stuff to do. As far as having the time to do all these projects and stuff, it's basically a matter of motivation.
mm,
Because there's people, they do their little side gigs because they either want to get famous or they want to make money,
mm,
or um, whatever drives your boat. For me, what kind of drives me to work on this stuff at home is the interaction I get with people.
mm,
Because I could very well make like model trains that sit in my house and never go anywhere. I could uh, the model rocketry group is a good group of people, but it's not a very big group.
right.
Um, where what drives me to work on these projects is I will be selfish. There is a little bit of a rock star
Sure.
feeling when you go to a convention and everybody wants your picture to know,
Mm.
like, oh, you have a ball with a mixing bowl on its head that's rolling. How the hell did you make that happen? Um, and so yeah, there's a little bit of that, but a lot of it that keeps me going is just like I've met all my friends in this community. So I got friends in the 501st. I got friends I dragged from costuming. I got friends I dragged into costuming. So this is part of like our big social outlet too.
Mm.
Um, Plus I've like what like this guy. Uh, there's a little joke I've always been trying to do, like if I ever did TikTok or Vine or whatever the kids are into these days. The what's it like owning a droid? And I'm like, well, I'm just gonna take my wallet and just keep throwing money at them. Um, but when you see like the reaction he gets of the people in the hospitals, or there's a young gentleman, William, who met my Dalek years ago at a convention, and now he's on his high school robotics team because of
Wow.
that. And like the difference it makes in people's day. It's like he's on his robotics team again. He's made a difference in a bunch of weddings. Um, I got one friend. I'm not going to mention her name because she'll get mad at me. But she was super shy and uh, like I could not get her to costume for years, and finally convinced her to try it. And this past celebration, she did one of the characters and actually ran into the people who came up with that character for the video game. So like seeing her smile has really made this because sometimes you get back and I'm let's face it, I'm 35. Most of my coworkers are at that point, like they got kids and families, and they're talking about their weekend plans are like, oh yeah, I went to I'm taking my kid to daycare, here's how I'm managing my lawn and something. I'm like, and sometimes you feel out of place about that, but then when you see like the impact you're doing with this stuff, like motivating people to get creative and brightening people's days, that's what really drives me to, get off my butt and get in that garage and do something.
I love that. Now, was it always that way? Did you find yourself seeing that that was what was driving you, or was it? I'm just interested. Like, was that always the goal, or has it changed over time?
Uh, well, in the grand scheme of things, it changed because originally, if you asked me where I wanted to be when I was in, like when I started my when I started college, and you asked me where I wanted to be, I wanted to be an astronaut by now.
Mm,
Or not even if it wasn't the astronaut path. I figure, okay, I'm going to be spending all my time in a lab to have my name on something that's going into space.
mm.
And that was it. I'm like, I don't need to go out and party. I don't need to do the social aspect stuff. um like this is it, this is what I'm doing. And along that way I took a very hard left turn. So yeah, I mean, I'm very thankful I'm still working on stuff that could go to space. Like, I don't know if you heard, Dynetics just got awarded the contract for the Artemis landers, so fingers crossed.
Awesome. One of
I'm
three. It's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, one of three. And then we also are one of the companies working with Astrobotic on the unmanned landers, so
Mm,
fingers crossed I'm getting something on the moon
hell yeah, dude. That's awesome.
before this is all over. But at that same time, so that dream's still going. But at that same time, where I thought, okay, I'm just going to be working on aerospace stuff all the time, I entered this other world where I'm like, I'm inspiring kids to get into robotics. I'm brightening people's days. I'm, like I joke around like, oh, what'd you do this weekend? Yeah, I worked on my house. Well, what'd you do this weekend? Well, I danced with the Disney princesses. My Dalek punched one of the doctors in the face. Um, had like the entire Star Wars cast, doing Bohemian Rhapsody. I mean,
Awesome.
it's a story I wouldn't change for anything.
Yeah. Now, has it been challenging? I say this question because I've had you have moments, I think, when you're off doing your own thing, something that's not typically normal,
Mm-hmm.
or like you're saying, you kind of feel out of place. I totally understand that, and I think a lot of people who are right on the edge of doing their own thing feel that. Was it a for me? I'll give my perspective, and I'd love to hear yours. But for me, it's been almost a therapeutic thing. So, obviously, it's been amazing reaching the people around the. It blows my mind that we reach people around the world with this podcast. That
Mm-hmm.
that blows my mind. And there are people who are in college to be engineers, or have graduated and haven't quite found their place. And when I talk to people at my day job about this, they just don't. And how could they they don't compute. As they're like, well, what do you do for fun? I'm like, I just told you.
Mm-hmm.
Has that what keeps you I mean, obviously it's the seeing the people's face, but do you have any tips for people who are trying in the process of finding that confidence to know that this is fine to do it, just because it's not typical eight normal fingers quotes. What would be your advice for someone that's right on the edge of starting it or trying to find that confidence?
The big single thing is, because I'm going to be honest, I worry about stuff all the time.
Mm,
I'm actually very much a, I have I have days I'm depressed. I've had months where there was like a very bad period a couple months about a year ago where I didn't want to do anything because I'm just like I've had it, and I would just like come home and sit on the couch till it was time to go to bed. And even today, there's like I'm constantly like I think I'm worried like, oh, what do my employers think of me with all this kiddie stuff? What do my parents think? Stuff like that. But then again, this was one of those lessons I learned from the frat is just go for it. So it's like okay, so silly example. Um, so I'm a big Cubs fan.
Mm.
I grew up from Chicago. My parents, my family, we grew up just south of Chicago. Um, and I'm not the biggest sports fan in the world, but I root for my home team, and I love my Cubs. So I'm keeping track of the standings all year, and we've had to deal with that. Okay, when's it going to happen
Yeah.
thing. Um, and I mean, I was in college in 2003 when the Bartman incident happened. So for those of you who don't know, we were like 2 outs away from making it to the World Series, and a fan caught the ball, and then we lost the
I can
game.
see it in my head.
Um, yeah. And I think that guy's still in witness protection. I don't know. And so when they finally won the World Series, first off, yeah, I remember the guy caught the ball and I just collapsed because my friends aren't all big sports fans. I got a couple down here who are Alabama football, but that's
Mm.
it. But they were all having Wayne watch because they all thought I was going to have a heart attack. Um, so they win the World Series, and I'm like, you know what? Because I thought about this for years. I'm like, you know what? I want whenever they win the World Series, I'm going to make the trophy because the commissioner's trophy has these 30 flags that are on an angle. Because I thought, it'll be fun to figure out what the equation is for how tall each flagpole is. So that July, I decided, you know what? I'm going to do this for DragonCon. So I made the trophy. I actually drove the equation
That's
and
awesome.
plugged it into Excel for how tall. Yeah, there's the.
Oh my God, please, yes. If you guys are not watching this on YouTube, you have to. Oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah, so I made the trophy, and I got I already own a Cubs jersey. It actually is Watney with number 2 on the back. And I got the baseball pants, and so I go to DragonCon. Now, I haven't been nervous at DragonCon in years, but there was this moment of, okay, I am wearing a Cubs sports costume at a geek convention in Atlanta. This is not going to go well. So I had two options. I could either play it safe and not do it, or I could say, screw it, I'm going to go see what happens. I kind of am on the no regrets philosophy, so I
Mhm.
went ahead and do it. And yeah, it was a big hit. A lot more Cardinals fans there than I thought, but yeah, it was a big hit. And so so a lot of thing with fear, because I got friends who they're afraid to go to conventions because they worry about feeling silly, or don't want to get on the karaoke stage or
Mm.
something. And I have those fears too. I go to a lot of conventions. I'm just worried about, okay, is this gonna go over well? And even with my day job, like I am scared to death of pressurized things.
Mm.
I don't like loud noises. Like we have to deal with pressurized, not just pressurized gases, sometimes it's pressurized flammable gases. Like
Right.
I have had to work with hydrogen a lot. And like honestly, yeah, that stuff scared the hell out of me. Um but at the same time, it's like, okay, well, my only two options here is either I can go suck it up and deal with it, or I can stay home and cower. And I'm like, no, there's a story ahead of me. I'm writing this story, so I go and do it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that because that I was before I started this podcast, I was in that place of fear. And so part of this podcast has been a journey of me fighting that fear. I mean, every time I have an interview, I mean, I've gotten better at realizing what it is, but yeah, I mean, I have a mini panic attack every time I do this. It's, um, fighting that fear with the scientific mindset has been my biggest tool in this fight, because everyone has fear, and I think letting people know that being afraid or having fear, that's just part of the human condition. Like it's good. Like it's not great that you feel that way, but it's there for a reason, and
Mhm.
what you do with it is what makes. I mean, that's why you have all these amazing things around you. It's why you're in the position you're in right now, is because you've gone against it, and like you said, just go for it.
Right. But well, and yeah, and sometimes fear is good. Like, so again, I'm a test engineer,
Mm,
and one of the weird things about that is you kind of have to be in this very pessimistic mindset because you have. So first off, I always tell everybody I work with, okay, we have three objectives here, and these are them in order.
mm,
A, we're all leaving in one piece at the end of the day. Two, we're not destroying the hardware, and then three, we're getting the data.
mm,
That's the and to be a good test engineer, I think you have to be a little bit of a pessimist and afraid because you have to figure out every single thing that can possibly go wrong.
right.
If this pressure sensor goes wrong, am I going to be blind to this instrument? If a bolt cracks, what happens? What um, if I'm standing here when this thing is pressurized, what is the worst possible outcome that could happen?
Right.
And there's a lot of people who would not deal with it, but we just work those problems and tackle them.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that because I've done some testing myself, and that pessimism is so important. Even to the point of, even to the point of not just accepting that everyone knows what they're doing, 100%.
We
And
have, yeah, we have a very important phrase which is trust but verify. Uh,
mm,
yeah, I very much trust the. Uh, yeah, I very much trust the group of people I work with. I would not be working with them if I didn't.
right.
And I hope they have the same opinion of me. But at
Mm,
the same time, we do have to, okay, um, double check, okay, did you make sure you closed the valve and stuff? Just because you have to make sure we didn't skip something.
right. No, I'm glad you said it that way. That's much better than the way I said it. Um, but that relates so much to like why, like when people see astronauts, they see them, they're prepared, they're like very, I don't want to say stone cold, but like they seem almost from the outside like super calm, and even just like the typical astronaut's demeanor. Um, but what you learn when you dive into it is that they're just so prepared. Like you're saying, they know to find out when something goes wrong, to know the dangers ahead of time, even down to the point where their family knows if something does go wrong, they're going to find out. All that stuff has been planned ahead of time, so then they can just go into the mission
Mhm.
and do what they need to do. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I think another part of that astronaut mindset is because when you get a task like that, you're laser focused. Like one of the things I deal with is, we all have stuff going on in our lives and stuff. And, like movies or podcasts or, TV shows everyone wants to talk about. Well, when I'm at the test conductor computer, I don't talk anything about that because I'm looking at all these displays and stuff. So that's where my attention is. So it's like I'm not trying to be rude. It's just like, yeah, I'll happily go over stuff either during lunch or after. But like right now, this is
A minute.
keeping all of my attention right now.
Yeah. Oh man, that's incredible. I thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, that's not, the fear aspect. It's something, and it's something I'm working more on to try, and I feel like, especially in today's world, the the new world as we call it. I think having that having that ability to break down information and, like you said, verify. Like there's so much unknown today, And as far as like information exchange, like you don't even know if the information you're getting is correct. And so having a tool to traverse that, just the pure chaos that's out there, I think having that science mindset is so important. It's very valuable. I don't think it's the only way, but it's very valuable.
It's critical. Because honestly, that's one of those things I always have a hard time relating to the general public is I don't. It's hard for me to understand a lot of people don't have a scientific mindset because like uh, one of the big things that ever on Facebook you always see these things about how come they taught us the uh, mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, but they didn't teach us to do our taxes. And I have to keep explaining to people, yeah, they taught you the science stuff so that if someone's talking bullshit to you.
Right. True. It's true. And I think and part of why I'm doing this segment is to kind of, like we said, break the egg of like what a scientist is and like how we think and where we came from.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think for so many people, I know for me, I had a hard time. Test taking was such a scary, like stress inducing, like literally I had so much stress that all the blood would go away from my brain and I literally couldn't remember a single thing when I took a test. And I think there's so many people that as soon as you say science, they think of that bad teacher or they think of that they just couldn't get it back in the day and they shut themselves off.
Mm-hmm.
But there's so many of us that have had that issue and we just, well, once you're out of school, you don't take you don't take tests anymore. So it doesn't really matter at that point.
You don't take them, but you run them.
But you run them, right? Right. That's fair. So I want to close out with just a few more things, like putting content online. As how have you approached that? How does it? Where do you draw the line in your day? Like, do you have a line where you say, "Okay, I'm done"? How do you structure that? How do you manage that?
More or less, it's just out of time priority because so first off, this is my first podcast, so thank you very much for having me on. It's an honor. So a lot of the stuff I do like I'll do panels at conventions, like either just on the robots or I've tried to do some even the more basic stuff like Ohm's electrical wiring, where I'll go into Ohm's law and why do you need the resistor on the LED and stuff like that. I've had a question come up at a bunch of panels, which is, how come you don't do a YouTube channel? You could get like so many followers. And the main reason I don't do that is because it's just so much time. Because like a typical day for me is I get up, I go to work, for 9 hours with like a 1 hour lunch break in there. I come home, I'll eat dinner, I'll let the cat sleep on my lap for about an hour. And I'll call my folks, and then I usually spend the next 4 hours working on something because part of the thing is I don't watch a lot. I rather keep my hands busy, so I don't watch. It's very rare to find a TV show that I actually like sit down to watch nowadays. It's usually just either background noise. Clone Wars has been kicking so much ass though. Like,
I have to catch up. I'm so behind. Everyone keeps telling me I gotta catch up, so I agree.
Yeah, so here's my plug for Clone Wars and Dragon Prince. So yeah, waiting on that season 4. But so it's like I don't want to spend a lot of time just editing videos or making videos and stuff because I'd rather be making something cool and letting the project talk for me. So right now, I'm doing the Instagram stuff. I used to do full write-ups on the builds, so they're actually on the 2-Story Props blog. There is a full write-up on how we did the Watney suit and how we did the Moon suit, along with all the other projects I did prior to 2015.
Okay. 2storyprops.com.
2storyprops.blogspot.com. So there's the old archive. So I've been wanting to get back into that. It's just again, usually it's like, okay, I'm either going to sit down at the computer and do that, or I'm going to, figure out, here's what I need to, like, what I'm doing the rest of tonight is I'm going through a parts list to figure out what I need to order for the new BB-8 and the Mars
Mm.
rover so that we can get that going.
So this is a selfish question, but I think it might
Uh-huh.
help some people. So I am learning that balance. I've gotten better at it. But I find myself, and I'm interested to see if you get to this space too. But uh, trying to find that balance, I sometimes will overshoot and then just have to pull myself back because I'm just trying to do too much at one time. Is that something you've learned over time, or was there something you learned that helped you with that?
I have hit burnout plenty
Mm,
of times. Yeah, with the project or work or life in general. And yeah, I mean, balance is hard. It's just trying to figure out what you want to do.
mm,
Um, so yeah, there's other things in my life I would like to do, like reading. I do live by myself right now, so I don't necessarily. I'm comfortable with that, but I maybe don't want that to be the forever case either. Um, but at the same time, it's like this kind of is my stress relief.
mm,
So that's one of the things is it actually like cutting wood in my garage is actually the most therapeutic thing I've done. Like I had to make, I remember earlier last year, I had to make the vacuum form bucks for our new proton packs because we decided to vacuum form them this time.
mm.
And I'm just sitting there with a ruler and a saw cutting MDF with a bunch of sawdust on my hands. And you just had this like kind of moment of zen.
Yes. Oh, I totally relate to that. Yeah, being hands-on is yeah, it's like a mantra. It's like a meditation almost. It's weird, but I try to do everything I can to do that.
Yeah. And as far as balance, I mean, the biggest problem, and this is probably the single scariest thing about getting older, I find, is because, back in college, everything's a possibility.
Mm,
There's all these student organizations you can try. There's all these, like-minded people, and most of them are still optimistic
mm,
about things at that point. And then you start hitting this point where people start getting a little more pessimistic and people start settling, or like,
mm,
okay, these dreams are not happening, like I know a few, like everyone starts off like, oh, I'm going to be a rocket scientist, I'm going to be a rock star, I'm going to sing on Broadway, and then you start seeing a few of them give up on that, and that starts being the most depressing thing. And the scary thing is, yeah, certain stores do start to close. Like, okay, like when you see the age of baseball players, and it's like, yeah, that's depressing.
mm,
Um, or I would, there's other things I would like to do if I had time. I would have liked to learn how to, sing or dance or, you know, honestly, if I wasn't doing this, I'd really like to go explore shipwrecks. That's been
mm.
kind of one of those fascinations I've had. Um, but at the same time, like this has been, I'm still enjoying this, so that's
Mm.
why I still do it.
Yeah. No, and that right there is the enjoying it part that I think. Look, it's not easy. I can say that from my own perspective. It's not easy to try and do the thing that you enjoy doing, even though it burns time, it burns money. But it's so important for you as a human being to do things that you enjoy. I mean, why are we here
mhm.
otherwise? We're not ants. We're not just here to build build
Yeah,
engines and stuff. There's so much out there, and this time is I mean, there's no better time, especially if you wanted to spread your message out online. I mean, literally in this new world, that's how
hmm
everyone's communicating right now. So if I've even gotten back into playing my trumpet, and getting back into playing music. It's been very, very nice. And granted, I there are days I just don't get to it. Like they just and that balance is a constant it's a constantly moving state that you're trying to find, which is very, it feels very scientific. It feels very almost rocket like, where it's like, okay, the rocket works when it's perfect, and you're just always trying to get it perfect.
Mhm.
Wayne, thank you so much, man, for being on. This was a great talk. I feel like we could talk for another few hours.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah.
And yeah, I got a lot of other stories we didn't even get to.
Okay, great. I mean, then we'll have to do it again. I mean, as far as podcasting is concerned, my friend, you settled right into it. This seems like your alley. So,
Thank you.
yeah, man. I'm glad, very happy that we were your first podcast experience. Is there any last words you'd like to tell the folks at home to close out?
So I kind of was giving some thought to this because, you know, a lot of people aren't going to be getting their commencement speeches this year. So I guess kind of a message to the class of 2020 and really anybody. Try to strive to do great things. Because even if things are not going to work out the way you think they are, again, I started this trip because I want to get hardware. You know, I want to get to space. I want to get hardware, and you know, I thought a lot of other things were going to happen by now that didn't happen. But at the same time, because I strive to do those things, I ended up on this journey full of uh, uh, robots, costumes, princesses, friends, and it was a journey I wouldn't trade for the world. So if you strive to do great things will happen, even if they're not what you expected them to be.
That's a perfect way to end this episode. Thank you again for being on.
Thank you very much.
Of course. Spread love, spread science, be well, and we'll see you on the next episode of Today in Space.